The Syrian president facing the most serious challenge to his rule as protesters continue to shake the southern city of Daraa. What are the chances of a revolution in this country? Will Syria be the next Arab regime to fall? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. Protests which have rocked the Arab world in recent months are now hitting Syria, a country ruled with an iron grip on security. Emergency laws in place since 1963 bans all forms of demonstrations, but the protesters are not backing down. Bashar al Assad, whose family has ruled the country for 40 years, is facing challenges like never before. The sound of live ammunition echoing through the dark streets of Daraa early Wednesday as security forces cracked down on demonstrators. Al Jazeera cannot independently verify these images. Reports suggest a number of people were killed at the Omeri Mosque, where protesters have rallied. A week of protests have demanded political reforms, for an end to corruption and for a lifting of the emergency law, which has been in place since 1963. It was then that the ruling Ba'ath Party banned all opposition. The Ba'athists are mainly from the Alawi sect of Islam. Syria is majority Sunni. In 1982, President Bashar al Assad's father launched a devastating three-week assault on the city of Hama, crushing a long-time insurgency by the Muslim Brotherhood. Around 30,000 people were killed, most of them innocent civilians. President Bashar al-Assad inherited power 11 years ago, promising reforms. Critics say nothing has changed. On Wednesday, state television portrayed events in Daraa as security forces saving citizens from being terrorized by armed gangs. It said the gangs had used Omeri Mosque to store their weapons and money. Despite the contradictory account of the violence, one former member of Syria's parliament said the government is listening to the protesters' demands.
The official information that was broadcast, that was diffused by the Syrian Ministry of Information, is that the demands were in their majority justified, that some of them take time in order to implement, some of them can be implemented immediately.
There are reports the governor of Daraa has been sacked. Some political prisoners have been released, but still others are being arrested. There's little evidence the government is in the mood to make significant concessions. And with the protesters remaining defiant, there are questions over whether Syria will see a repeat of its brutal history. So it's been an unprecedented week for Syria, and to discuss it further, we're joined by our three guests from London. Ghias Al-jundi, Syrian author and human rights activist. From Paris, Samir Ai-ta, chief editor of the Arab edition of Monde Diplomatique. And from Amman, Jawad Al-Anani, a political analyst for the Jordanian-based think tank Al-baseera. Also, former foreign minister for Jordan. Gentlemen all, thank you very much for joining us here on Inside Story. Let's start by taking a look at these recent events. Ghias Al-jundi, can you tell us what sparked these protests a week ago and why they've kicked off in Daraa?
There was a campaign on the Facebook. There was a page calling on people to go out, demonstrate and ask for freedom, for reform, for the end of emergency law. This is the indirect reason behind the demonstration, but the direct one, the security forces or the secret services, military intelligence arrested tens of little boys, actually, all they are under 10, for writing on school walls that people need to change, want to change the regime. And that just they learned it from Egypt or Libya or Tunisia. And they took them to Damascus, to a very notorious detention center called Palestine Branch. And people were demanding that these little children should be released immediately because they are children. And the government would not listen. So first of all, people like 200 to 300 people gathered next to the Al-Omeri Mosque and asked for freedom, demanded freedom, political reform, and end of corruption, end of emergency law. But then the police arrived and started having really heavy hand on these people, and the reaction of the city was to support these guys with their demands. Also, Daraa is suffering of, because Daraa is a border city, so all people cannot sell or buy lands, and every person wants to sell his land or her land. They need a security forces permission, which has to go by like the secret services, and that takes ages, like takes a year. And most of Daraa people are saying that they usually pay half of the land price for bribery, for like to bribe the security forces, and this was added to the tension. And of course, there is no freedom of expression. People want freedom.
We'll get more into more of the reasons behind these protests in just a moment. First of all, I just want to know that without this catalyst of this overreaction by police to these children graffitiing, would we be seeing these protests on the streets at the moment?
I think we would have seen it. Yeah, we would see it, like, but not on the same scale. Not in the same scale. I think the Syrian authorities just made a mistake. That the first mistake, they arrested little children, and second of all, they refused to release them, and that escalated the situation. That made it worse for them and for people as well. So I think we would have seen more demonstrations as well. Like, people want freedom. Syria is ready for change now.
Okay, Samir Ai-ta, can I ask you, what do you feel is the significance of this uprising in a country known for its very brutal repression in the past?
Yes, first I would like to say that I'm very sad for the people who died. I'm always sad when Syrians kill Syrians for the difference in political opinion, and I hope that the authorities especially will be wiser in their attitude. Look, the Syrian people has been supportive for the foreign policy, for the national and regional policies of the authorities. It has sustained a lot of efforts. It went against the American invasion of Iraq. It went against the tentative of Chirac to overthrow the regime. It went against the Hariri March 14 camp trial to make confessional things in Syria, and the authorities owe the people in Syria what Bashar al Assad have promised in the beginning, which means more freedom, more accountable government, and a better social policy. Syria cannot be far away from the new Arab awakening. The people are listening to the TVs, to the new internet and other media, and they want, like the Egyptians, like other countries, some more freedom in a peaceful way, some more accountable government in a peaceful way, and more real social policy, not crony capitalism, in a peaceful way.
So how popular is Assad himself?
I think he is not really at the center of the critic. Look at what happened in Daraa when they showed us image about some government building who has been burned or so. We don't know exactly who burned this building, but the photo of Bashar al Assad is still there, meaning that the people points more on Rami Makhlouf, the cousin, or other secret services behaving not normally, and hope that Bashar al-Assad, because of his national policies, could come with a major gesture saying, look, I made a promise when I came to power in the year 2000, and with more freedom, more accountable government, and more social policies, and I will go with these demands. I am young, I can understand the people, and I can do it. It's hard, but I hope he will do it.
Jawad Al-Anani, Do you feel that Assad is in touch with his people, the young people especially?
Well, at the beginning of his rule, there was some optimism, as was mentioned before, that he would really open up to the people. He would follow more of a less centralized economic management approach. He would allow more freedoms to the people. But it seems to me that people view President Assad as a man who is willing, but he is being surrounded or besieged by the people of his father, who think that any loosening of the grip over the central government would really encourage people to encroach upon the authority of the regime. So therefore, I think eventually he has changed his course, and he has not been as forthcoming towards reform as people would have liked him to do so. So in a way, I think that people still believe that he is willing and he wants to do reform, but he's being denied that by the people who are around him and who are enjoying the current status quo.
Ghias Al-jundi, I can see you shaking your head there.
No, I don't agree at all. I don't agree. This is what the propaganda the Syrian regime is sending around. That Bashar wants to do some reform, but he cannot. It's absolutely not true, because Bashar had the chances, had the opportunities to make some really good steps, but he wouldn't. Like, I was reading his new or latest interviews he gave to the Western media. First of all, he said Arab people, they are not ready for change, for democracy, and they said the next generations would do that. And he also said in another interview, said, look, reform needs more time, and then we have only few political prisoners. Why you are worried about? Of course, we have like thousands of political prisoners, not few. We have too many political prisoners, including children. We have children political prisoners, and this idea or the theme, which going around in the country or Middle East, that he wants to. I think Bashar had the opportunity. He could do it. He recently brought the old guard, Ali Duba and Mohammed Al-Khuli, the one who terrorized people in the detention center in the past. He brought them back to the presidential palace to help him grip his hand over people. He wouldn't even admit we have problem. He wouldn't admit. He has the chance. He had the opportunity. He can still change. The shooting in Daraa, this sad, depressing shooting in Daraa, I'm sure he is aware of it. I'm sure he can stop people. He called 2 days ago saying, call the tribal leader or the community leaders, I call them. He said, like, we will investigate. After his call, they were shooting, they were killing. Last night incident, unforgivable. He is aware, and people who burned the stuff in the center, the Baas Party center in Daraa, they are confirmed in news, there new reports that not the demonstrators, because people burned everything and they wouldn't touch Bashar's picture and his father's picture. I think it was on purpose. And then, of course, people in Daraa would say, Allah, Syria, Hurriya, Bas, because this is, or the freedom, God, and Syria only. Because, and that means there is no Bashar. This is only Syria and freedom. It's what we want.
Okay.
Bashar is spreading the news. This is not true at all.
Okay, Mr. Samir Ai-ta, do you believe or not that there is a split in the government there, that Assad is at odds with members who were connected to his father's regime?
Two things. First, I respect all what my colleague earlier has stated, and I respect his opinion as it is representative of some of the opinion of the young people in Syria. But again, I don't think the problem is between the old guard and Dr. Bashar al-Assad. It's between some kind of new guard and Dr. Bashar al-Assad. Meaning that the image, the clear image is Rami Makhlouf, who had built an empire with monopolistic areas in telecommunications, in real estate, and etc. And that in the policy of the government today is neo-liberal, which means exactly the same that has been in Egypt for 20 years and had led to what happened in Egypt. A second issue is what is possible and what is to be done. Everyone, like myself, want to avoid in Syria killing. We want a transformation for a normal regime and more social regime. A normal regime means even for the president to be accountable, which means to have a presidency which is limited in duration, where many people can run for presidency on an election base. My belief is that today, if he moves the good way, he could win the presidency easily, even if there is free elections. But the most people he wait and there is killing and etc. The more the situation is deteriorating. It's bad for the internal things and for let's say for the Syrian stand against Israel to support the resistance.
Yeah, we'll move right along to the international implications just after we hear what Assad had to say back in January. He certainly felt very secure in his position then in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. He dismissed any notion that Syria was like Egypt and would see similar unrest. He said, Egypt has been supported financially by the United States while we are under embargo by most countries of the world. We have growth, although we do not have many of the basic needs for the people. Despite all that, the people do not go into an uprising. Well, those words we know now were spoken too soon. Jawad Al-Anani, was Assad being short-sighted, or did those protests take everyone by surprise?
To be honest with you, the elements of nature and as well as the Arab uprising have escaped the attention of all analysts, and what has been happening has been surprising to everyone. It is only natural for leaders where riots take place or uprising takes place to engage in self-denial. They just can't believe what has happened, and I'm sure when he said that when the president, Dr. Bashar al Assad, said what he said to the Wall Street Journal, he truly believed so. But I don't think that anybody in the Arab world right now, no leader, can really sit in his chair and relax and say that I am safe or immune from an uprising.
How significant is it? How significant is it that he thought that Syria was different because it was not pro-Western and it took a very hardline stance against Israel?
Well, I mean, he was looking at this from a unidirectional point of view. From his analysis, he thought that the Egyptian case was basically judged not by internal problems and by corruption and complaints of the people that the government was failing to deliver. He was looking at it from an external point of view, that because of the relations of Egypt with Israel, which has angered some people and who did not want to normalize with Israel, that would have explained why the people went out in the streets. But then we were surprised that most of the people in the Liberation Square in Cairo were calling for democracy, for restoration of dignity, for a better standard of living, but we're not saying much about political issues, especially those related to Israel. So I believe that there was a certain way of analyzing the situation, but I'm sure that in Syria, people are, of course, worried and they care about what happens in Palestine, but at the same time, they are also keen about having a better standard of living. Syria, by the way, is a country that can be a fully independent economy and can achieve a lot. Syria always had industry, had savvy people who could deal with technology. There are many Syrian talents all over the world. And so people are surprised, why aren't we delivering, and what can't we achieve what we could potentially do? And so therefore I think there is a gap. And now that gap is overweighing political considerations, and people want to have dignity at home before they start looking outward.
Mr. Al-jundi, do people there care less about patriotism and more about their own personal standards of living?
I think the Syrian regimes decided to market this idea that I'm against the West, I'm against Israel, and I'm safe. And I think, like inside himself, was saying I'm safe because I have 7 kinds of secret services and police, which is terrifying people for the last 45 years, and it's why he was a bit safe. The idea of being against America and against Israel, it doesn't add up anymore in the country. People want to live, want a good standard of living, freedom of speech. Like last month, they arrested 4 men. One of them, he's already spent 16 years in prison. It's called Abbas, and he's been arrested for no reason. Just to give an example, he was in a funeral with other friends of his, and he's been sentenced to 15 years, reduced to 7 years. Why is that? Why people want to care about America now? His stance against America, and most of the people, they don't believe that he is really he has great stance against America, because he keeps sending message to America and Israel. We want to be, look, we're not going to waste any opportunity for peace with Israel, blah, all this stuff. So people, at the end, people care about their safety, about their standard of living, about their freedom. If you don't want to say a word and you go to prison for 5 years, like this young girl Tal Al-Malouhi, for example, who has
Samir
very simple blog.
Samir Ai-ta, if we can look a little bit more at the international implications here. We've had the Israeli Defense Forces suggesting that Syria might actually create a provocation on its border to divert attention from what's happening domestically. Do you consider that a likely event, or is that just pure paranoia on Israel's part?
I think the most embarrassed in all these Arab revolutions are the Israelis. Forget about the government, look at the people in Israel. Even when the Tunisian revolution came up, there was no voice in Israel on a popular way to say hello to democracy, hail to democracy, while this country is represented in the West as being the only democracy in the region. And while the Jewish community in Tunisia supported the Tunisian revolution, the Israelis will make anything which can make troubles in the region. In Lebanon, they are doing this all the time. Maybe they can do it now for Syria. They are doing this for Jordan, for Egypt, making trouble for the army, for the situation in the Sinai. Okay, going to the conspiracy theory, whatever happens, my belief is that the Israelis, even if they play a dirty game in a short period, on the long run, they are losers, because they have to give the Palestinians rights. And today the problem is no more giving a state to the Palestinian, as it becomes very imbricated. It's to have a one-state solution with citizenship.
That deserves a whole half
Israel.
hour to discuss alone, does it not? That's a huge issue to discuss. Let's just keep it on Syria for the moment. We have just about run out of time. I'd just like to give the final word to Jawad Al-Anani. The protesters have given the government until Friday to meet their demands. They're going to be calling it the Friday of Martyrs. They're expecting protests throughout the country. What do you think is going to happen?
I think that the dynamics, will eventually work unless the government responds. The government must show some sympathy and empathy with the people. What happened in Daraa could easily be transformed to other places in Syria, and I believe that the government has to respond. Without responding, I think that the dynamics will eventually work themselves out like they did in other countries.
Astonishing times indeed for Syria. There, for the moment, we'll have to leave the discussion, though. Ghias Al-jundi in London, Samir Ai-ta in Paris, and Jawad Al-Anani in Amman. Thank you all very much for joining us today. And thanks to you too for watching this edition of Inside Story. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, do email your comments and suggestions to insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.